Hi there, my name is Josh Bissell, and I'm the COO at Plan to Protect and the producer of Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell. Thank you for joining us this week. Amanda and Melody are off, and so for the podcast this week, we've got a special treat. During our second Serious About Safety masterclass, Melody interviewed Barrie Doyle and chatted all about crisis response and management. I hope you enjoy this interview, and if you do, please consider sharing the podcast with others. And if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button down below so you can get all of our future episodes, and the bell icon so you'll get notified as they come. Please enjoy this special interview between Melody Bissell and Barrie Doyle.
Hello, my name is Melodie Bissell. I am the president at Plan to Protect, and it is my privilege to invite Barrie Doyle to join us today. Thank you so much, Barrie, for joining us. Let me introduce Barrie to you. Um, Barrie was born in Wales. He's a former journalist, public relations consultant, a college professor, a broadcaster, a freelance writer. He served with major publications in Canada and United States before sharing his media expertise as a consultant training corporate executives and Christian ministry leaders. Barrie trained many budding public relation professionals as a professor at one of Canada's most prestigious media studies program in Toronto. He has lived in Virginia, California, and Pennsylvania, as well as Great Britain and Canada, where he now lives in the beautiful blue water shores of Georgian Bay, Ontario. He is an enthusiastic traveler, constantly thinking about how to bring his latest travel discovery to life as a location in his next story. So he is an author, but so much of what Barrie brings into his stories come from real life experiences. I know Barrie because he has served as a crisis consultant, and he has really been frontline working with so many organizations around crises. And that's exactly what we're talking about today when the worst thing happens. Welcome, Barrie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Good to be with you.
Barrie and I partnered together this past January. Well, that's when it was launched. We did all the work last year around, along with Roundtable Video, when we produced our newest certification course, and it's called Crisis Response and Management. And Barrie and I teamed up to produce this course, and already we've had our first cohort go through it, and they have found it so tremendously helpful. And you know, Barrie, just this week I had a phone call from a client, and they are facing a crisis this week.
You know, it you never know when it's going to hit you. That's the crux of the thing. It hits you always at a time when you are unprepared and at a time when you least want it. You know?
So, Barrie, tell me your definition of a crisis.
Well, I will give you my definition because the dictionary definitions really don't embody what is really happening. Uh, a crisis for an organization, a crisis is one of those. There's an incident, there's a flashpoint, something happens, and it shakes the integrity of the organization internally. But more importantly than that, it has a potential for long-term negative implications to the organization, either in image, in sales, indeed its very existence. So, but it happens, as we said, unexpectedly. When you least expect it, just when you were planning to have a nice week off and go to the cottage or go to the beach and just relax. That's when it hits or 9 o'clock at night. Um, there's no way around it other than to say that it is one of those things that's going to impact you and it's going to hurt.
It really makes you feel like you just want to hurl, like you really can't deal with it, like it's like your worst nightmare happens. And we've been
It's
asking
a kick in
students
the
in
stomach.
series, yeah, we've been asking students this week in series about safety, what's your worst case nightmare? And they've been listing their worst case nightmares, and that's what a crisis is. But
That's
what's the difference between a crisis and a problem?
I think that's an area where people really do get mixed up. A problem is some issue that comes up that can be fixed. It's unexpected, but it's a technical thing, or it's an administrative thing, or something along that line. It's an annoyance. It's bad news, but you can fix it. You yourself can fix it, and it does not have a public component to it. So that's the problem. It's when the public component appears, when your crisis goes beyond your doors. That's what we're talking about. I think everybody is vulnerable, um, but I think the kind of clients that you deal with are the organizations that are even more vulnerable. I mean, in the certificate course that we did, I talk about companies like BP Gas when their well in the Gulf of Mexico blew up, and how they handled it was bad. But I mean, you know, if you're BP Gas, you can expect there's going to be some disasters along the way. It's the nature of that business. But they have the resources and should be able to handle it. The clients that Plan to Protect is dealing with, I think, are vulnerable in other ways, more impactful ways, because they BP can survive. They got the financial resources. They can somehow they'll get through it. They'll survive. Exxon survived its Valdez crash. Most organizations haven't got that kind of resource and that ability, and it could severely hamper them. It could close down a ministry. It could close down a camp. It could close down a school. Close down a nursing home. We've had lots of negativity around nursing homes. So I think is when vulnerable people are involved. That's when you are most vulnerable as an organization, because bad news is going to happen.
The reason we did this course is, and we had this conversation around the table, and it was probably almost 2 years ago now, Barrie, when I was saying, you know what, we need this course because every week I'm getting phone calls from some of our clients telling us they're facing a crisis. 2 weeks ago, the crisis was a youth leader that sexually abused a 15-year-old. And he had been an active volunteer within the organization for many years. This week, I've heard two crises. This is one organization that literally shut down almost all of their programming and all of their activity because of COVID-19. But one of their youth sponsors started texting and communicating with one of the youth online, and the conversation went from just, caring, how are you doing, to sexual innuendos, to arranging photographs to be shared online. And that was last week's activity. And and then I heard about another one a couple weeks ago where it was an organization where they had shut down the offices, and one of the workers who was handling finances and donations was doing it from home. And someone from the house got access to credit card information because that information now had been taken from the office to the home, and that credit card information had been left out on a table, on a desk somewhere, and someone in the house took that information and, stole
Yeah,
credit card information. So I'm hearing these crises every day.
yeah, and so you're not going to have the chances are that you're not going to have a huge crisis of incredible proportions. It's going to be more that kind of thing. But those are the things that shape the faith of the community, the members. It rocks them, and they pull back. They just I'm not so sure I want to be associated with this group, or and as you say, they walk with their feet. They vote with their feet, and they also vote with the fact that they're not supporting you anymore financially, and you're going to suffer. It's the small things that actually have a bigger impact. It's more likely than a big thing. There's one other thing that we do need to be aware of, and I would say, for schools and for camps and things like that, major accidents involving injuries and but possibly deaths. Camp sends out a group in a canoe, a group of canoes, and one tips over and somebody drowns. Those there's also those kinds of crises as well. The thread that runs through the whole thing, though, is communication. How people communicate. So it's one of those things that you really need to know how to handle it, even when you don't want it and you're not expecting it.
What kind of mistakes have you seen that organizations have done or fallen into in handling a crisis incorrectly?
Um, well, there's any number of them. One of them is avoiding and kind of the ostrich effect. Stick your head in the sands. It's not happening. I know that youth leader. I know that financial guy, and they would never do a thing like that. And then that cuts off all discussion. I'm not even going to entertain that thing. So that's the first mistake this made. Instead of doing an investigation, the other thing I think is that it's bad news. It's not happy. It's a very unhappy situation. It hits you in the stomach too. If somebody that you've trusted betrays you, it's a personal betrayal as well as an organizational betrayal. And so then the tendency becomes one of closing the ranks. But we won't talk about it. We'll deal with it internally, but we won't talk about it. And so there's a problem there. Unfortunately, today, social media and all that kind of stuff, word gets out. And now you've got a situation where you've tried to close ranks. You've got the public now becoming aware of it. And if it's on social media, reporters will find out. And then next thing you know, if it's of sufficient interest to the reporters, they'll call you. Now the thing is growing and escalating, and you're still holding it together, and you're still trying to ignore it and ignore the media. So if people call you and say, what's going on at the church? What's going on at the school? What's going on at the camp? There's nothing going on. It's just a minor, and we're just, that kind of, it's not happening. And if I say it's not happening, don't talk about it. That's lack of communication. So those are I would say those are the big areas. Just refusing to acknowledge and refusing to communicate with your core supporters first and foremost. They're the most important people, and you're not telling them. Now I understand privacy. I understand you're innocent until proven guilty. I understand that there's a process that has to take place. I understand all that. But you can still communicate with people to let them know you're doing something. You're not making a judgment. You're doing something.
That's so good. I have seen two big mistakes made among our clients. One of those is that they will have someone who is responsible for plan to protect or abuse prevention within the organization. They've invested for that person to take professional development courses. They've got policies and procedures in place. So they're doing a good job of prevention. But then when a crisis hits, the board and the senior leadership, they don't involve that key person that's that has that professional development,
Mm-hmm.
who knows the rules around reporting and responding to abuse. They know what the policies are, but all of a sudden, the board and the senior leadership, they think that they should handle it in isolation of that person who they've invested in
Yeah,
professional development in, and they don't consult that person. And that's a big concern to me because then
yeah,
they end up doing things really wrong.
that's right. And that's why we created the course for the leadership is
Yeah.
to say to them, if this is your key person, but you ought to know where they're coming from too. So it's an educational thing so that we can partner the two. We can partner the person that they've invested in, but also themselves, and they can work together.
That's what we did. We did that really intentionally, and some people don't like it a lot. The fact that we say that one of the prerequisites for taking the crisis response course is that you need to bring along someone in senior leadership, someone on your board or someone in senior leadership. It's not saying that we're not going to have, a supervisor be present or the children's pastor or the youth pastor. It's not, we're not saying that they can't come, but they can't come alone. They have to come with someone from their board or senior leadership so that they can together put that crisis plan in place.
Yeah, if you're if I guess to me it's a no-brainer. If you are in leadership and if you care about your organization, you care about its ongoing survival in good times and in bad. And a good leader will know who to tap into, but also be a participant. And oftentimes, unfortunately, for some people who are good administrators, but not so good on public platforms, unfortunately for them, they're often the spokesperson at the worst time, and it puts them into a very uncomfortable position because they're not happy with it. The courses will actually give them some ammunition, give them some assistance, and I hope I try to put this across, give them some confidence that they can handle it. They don't have to do everything, but they can handle it. You know, these people are good people. They're smart.
How important is a crisis management plan?
I think that's your. Let's go back to what we talked about when we said what's define a crisis, and it's something unexpected happens at the worst possible time. If you don't have a plan, let's look at it from the other perspective. If you don't have a plan, it's panic time. It is, as you said, it's like a kick in the gut. It's something that makes you sick to your stomach and keep you awake at night and can ruin, your emotional and mental stability for a while you're dealing with it. But a plan will give you some confidence. It will give you some resources. It'll give you some direction, some guidance, and it will walk you through. Okay, well, you know what? Yes, it is a shock. Yes, it is horrible. Yes, it is bad news for our organization. But if we do this, and if we do that, and if we do this, we can handle it. And there's a confidence. And I think that's the key, that in a crisis, the person who's leading the crisis response has to be confident. They have to exude that confidence to their members, to their clients, to the neighbors, to the public. Yes, we've got a bad situation, but we're handling it and we're doing it the best we can. And we're working with people, and it just kind of lowers the temperature. So a plan is good for those reasons.
The homework assignment for the crisis response, and you haven't seen all these, Barrie, but I love reading them because it literally is a roadmap for the participants that if they have a crisis, they can pull it out, and it literally gives them a resource directory. It gives them media talking points. It gives them exactly ideas on what to put on their website, who to contact, who to get help from, you know, how to approach media, and it literally is a roadmap. So
Absolutely.
I am concerned that people, they think, well, I'm too busy to take the course. We're too busy. I think not to take the course, you're setting yourself up for failure when a crisis, not if a crisis, but
Yeah.
when a crisis occurs. Because literally, when that crisis occurs, or even if you've got a colleague that has a crisis, you literally would be able to give them the tips on how to manage that crisis. So I know that there are denominations and associations that are encouraging all of their organizations and members to send someone to the course, just because it really does provide them a roadmap on how to deal with a crisis when it occurs.
About 3.5 years ago, I did a crisis plan for an organization. I had a phone call from them about 2 weeks ago. There's a potential crisis brewing, and the person that I was talking to said, he said, I've been reading through this plan. He was new. He's new to the organization. He had not been with the organization when I did the plan. He's new, and he said, first thing I did, I read through it. He says, boy, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's really helped me. He said, now I just want to confirm a few things with you, and but he'd already had the confidence to move forward and actually put into effect some steps before he even talked to me. And that's what it's all about. It's protection, it's prevention, it's a confidence boost. If I know what I'm doing, I feel a lot better about doing it.
And you do know what you're doing. And I know that if I hit a crisis, you'd be on speed dial. You'd be the first person I call. And I know that you're probably on many organizations' speed dial. What is really important for that spokesperson? Like, I know that when I'm in front of, a reporter, I get nervous. When I have been in front of a camera, I've been nervous. What is really important when it comes to that communication, that spokesperson, the person who's speaking to media? What do we need to know what should that organization do or identify
Mhm.
for that person that's going to be in front of the microphone?
I think first of all, accept that you are now in another dimension. You're in a different situation than you are normally in, that you are comfortable in. You're going into an uncomfortable situation. That's what makes people nervous. Um, I think in today's society, there's a very anti-media bias. They're all scum. They're all liars. They're all terrible. They've got, and that's just so false, because that's not who the media are. And and I can prove it over and over and over again. Um, the media have a job to do, and that is to report on stories that are of interest to their readers, their viewers, their listeners, whatever. And it's just information. They're not going to make a judgment as to what's right or wrong. They're going to say, here's what's happening. But you may not like what's happening. You may be very angry with what's happening, but don't kill the messenger. So I think I think the first step that they've got to do is even if they hate the media, put that hatred aside. I'll give you a good example of the kind of approach. I've said this in the course. I'm going to say it today. The media are not your friend. They're not your friend, but they're not your enemy either. They're a tool that you can use to accomplish what you want to have accomplished. And the example I'm going to give you is me. The other day, I had a mechanical problem at home. I didn't know what to do, and I looked at. I am not a mechanically minded type of individual at all, and I picked up this thing that was supposed to be a power screwdriver or power something else, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I hated the machine. I mean, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to use it, but I had to. And so I attached the the thing that goes into the nozzle or whatever it is, and and I actually screwed the piece back together again. Yay! That's the way you have to look at the media. They're a tool. They're a hammer. They're a chisel.
I know one of the things you say in the course is, and it sort of goes to what you were saying, that they're not your friend, but not your foe either. And that is, don't say to the media, it's off the record, because nothing is off the record,
No, nothing.
Yeah.
It's like it's they have their agenda, but you have an agenda too. And so there's this little dance that you do. And the whole point is for you to get your point across, to get your story across, to show. And who cares whether the reporter believes you or not? That's totally immaterial. That material, that stuff that you're going to give them, the reader is going to make the decision. The viewer is going to look at it and say, "Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense." In a crisis situation, we can't discuss the details right now. However, this is going on, that's going on, and it's our goal to be as transparent as possible and go on. The reader makes up the mind. Oh, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, I understand that. That's who you're trying to hit. I don't care what the reporter thinks. I really don't. You're a tool that I'm using to get the work done, and I think that's the key.
There's another good thing that you said in the course. This course is so excellent. Honestly, I think it's really the best course that we offer at Plan to Protect. One of the things that you say in the course is that they don't assume that they understand, if you're a church, faith language, or that they even understand what your vision and mission are. So provide them information and don't make any assumptions. And I thought that was a really important thing that you said in the course.
Yeah, most of them don't come from a church background like anybody else in Canada. It's basically a secular society. They don't understand churches. They don't understand the motivation of churches and Christians. They don't get a lot of what's going on, and they don't understand the difference between Protestants and Catholics, and within the Protestant community, and this one is this denomination, this one is this denomination, and they scratch their heads and can't figure it out. Or Muslim or anybody. They just don't get it. And so this is why the plan is so important. This is why the plan is so important, because you put that stuff down and you explain who you are in very simple language, who you are, what you do, why you do it, and you have it at hand. So when the media calls, you're not scrambling for this stuff in your head. It's right there on a piece of paper.
Another really good tip that you gave, and this was news to me, was that when they call, you don't have to talk to them that very second, that you can ask them, what is your deadline? I will call you back, and to make sure that you do call them back within your deadline. But that gives you time to scribble some notes, to get your thoughts together, and you ask them their name, ask them what media outlet they're from, ask them what their deadline is, call them back before their deadline. But that just supports what you said, is that you're using this person who's called you to be a means to get a message out. And by saying no comment, you're just allowing them to go find another source.
Yeah.
It's not the message that you want communicated.
No, I mean, a reporter is out there. His agenda or her agenda is to get a story. They have an editor crawling up their back to get that story done. So if you don't want to talk to them, that's fine. That's, your prerogative, but I'm going to talk to somebody. And the person that they talk to may be somebody who's totally diametrically opposed to everything that you're doing, who has a real hate on for who you are and what you're doing. The reporter gets that information, and you blew it by not providing the information. You mentioned two things there about, off the record. And I think that's really, really important. Nothing you say is off the record. That animal does not exist. Second thing, no comment. You think about it. Most people, with minute somebody, politician, uh, a bureaucrat, a business leader, the minute they say no comment, Aunt Maud, who's sitting back and having a cup of tea, she's sitting there saying, "Oh, he's guilty." If he won't comment on it, it's just it's something ingrained in our society's thinking. I think that if you say no comment, you're hiding, you're ducking, you're not taking responsibility. You're not willing to talk about this. There's something wrong, and that wrong means you're guilty. So those are things that you don't do. And on the course, we talk about how to say no comment without using those words, how to provide them with what they want, which is a story, and line it up with what you want, which is to get your story across to the reader, to the other people, to the audience. That's the key. I'm not saying this just for the churches or anything like that, because I've dealt with businesses. I've dealt, as you said, I taught media relations at the college. Everybody needs this information. Everybody, because if you're in any kind of leadership position, you're going to run into it.
Well, thank you, Barry, so much. I really hope that this has been helpful. I'm sure it has been helpful to those that are listening. I know that those that have taken the course, our crisis response and management course, they have loved it. They've really appreciated it. They've even sent others to the course.
Good.
And I just want to thank you for the time and effort that you put into even producing the course. It's just excellent material.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Bye, Barry.
Bye.